It began with small things, like frequent wall knocking, footsteps walking around my bedroom, not coming up from my friend's apartment above me. I hear this stuff a lot, so that's not really a concern. Yeah, it's a little creepy, but it doesn't bother me. Not nearly as much as what else I'll list. This one time, I was with my friend sitting in my room, and my mom left 15 minutes prior for an appointment. My friend and I were chilling on the bed, and we heard 3 loud knocks on my bedroom door. And she asked if it was my mom, and I was like, yeah, and I told her to come in. But she didn't answer, because my mom wasn't actually there. I had gone to open the door in case she didn't hear me, but there was nobody there. Another time, I had another friend over, and I went to get her some water from the kitchen, and I heard her saying something. So I said, 1 second. I was like 1 room over, so I wasn't more than 15 feet away. And I came back and asked her what she had said, and she looked at me and said, I didn't say anything. But it was so clearly her voice. She's not the type to pull pranks. She's a teacher, and we're really close. And she knows I get super freaked out, so she wouldn't do anything like that to freak me out. I was on FaceTime with my friend one time. She's from Norway. I had my laptop on the desk, facing my bedroom door. I left the room to get something from the kitchen, and ended up having a conversation with my parents for 4 or 5 minutes. I came back and she said that my door was swinging open and closed. I have this jewellery box from when I was a kid. You know, the ones with the ballerina or fairy, and it plays a little classical sort of tune. She said she had heard that music while the door was swinging open and closed. I was sufficiently creeped out. I've had other instances where I'll be on FaceTime, and one of my friends will hear or see something while I'm in another room or not paying attention. Another time, I was laying on my bed, and I felt as if something had slammed onto my bed from underneath. The whole thing shook. Most of the time, it's just knocks and footsteps inside the room I'm in. Things will move around. Pretty basic. Maybe a month or two ago, I was sitting in my mom's bed watching a show. Both my parents were in the kitchen, and I saw a tall black shadow figure pass through the hallway into my bedroom. I was so freaked out, but I was sure it wasn't going to harm me. Now one of my friends can see, hear, and communicate with spirits, etc. And my ex-girlfriend, who I just recently broke up with, is someone who can sense and feel when there is something present. I was walking with the two of them to the front hallway, and when we passed by the living room, they looked at each other and said, "You saw that?" They said, "Yeah, but I didn't see it." They told me it wasn't a harmful spirit, just a man who probably used to live here. Mind you, whenever something happens, my dog notices it too, and her ears perk up and she'll be looking in the direction of the noise or whatever is moving. Now, by far the creepiest thing that's happened to me was a month ago, maybe a little more. I was taking a video of myself for TikTok, and I felt my hair get tugged. I didn't think anything of it until I rewatched the video, and I saw a lock of my hair get pulled away from my head. I live in a terraced London townhouse, where the walls are extremely thin, and you can hear every creak throughout your house and in the houses on either side. Over the summer, I was left to house sit my parents' house, and so was home alone for around a month and a bit. Over this time, I'd been spooked a few times by the neighbours walking up their stairs in the middle of the night, and various other creaks and bangs. But there is still a distinct difference between the volume of noise from the houses next door and my own house. Not once did I genuinely think something was in my house. On the last night before my parents were due to come back, around 2 a.m. on FaceTime to my boyfriend, I heard what sounded like someone walking up my lower flight of stairs. I told my boyfriend to be quiet so I could listen. I noticed it was louder than what I'd usually say was the sound of my neighbour's stairs, but I ignored it. Until I heard the unmistakable sound of my parents' bathroom door creaking open and slam shut, and the sound of a tap being turned rapidly on and off with the water hitting the sink. In my house, you may be able to hear the neighbours move about, but you can't hear their water running. My boyfriend said he couldn't hear anything, but after seeing the look on my face, he advised me to call the police. I don't spook easily from ghosts or spirits. I just genuinely believed someone was in my house. A week before, a neighbour told me to make sure to lock my back door as there had been a few instances of burglary on the street. I immediately thought that it could be a predator or burglar that had stalked out my house, noticed it was just a small young woman on the property and decided to break in, and that I'd stupidly forgotten to lock the back door or a window or something. The police come within minutes, and I'm literally shaking as I open the door, like quivering. They storm the house yelling "police" and check every single room and possible signs of entry. Coast was clear, no perverts or burglars, and every window and door was locked, meaning no one else was in the house. I was so embarrassed, but thanked them as they left. One male officer asked me as he walked out the door, "Do you believe in ghosts?" I responded that I didn't really. I hadn't even considered the possibility of ghosts at that point. I was fully convinced I was under threat from a human being. The living are a greater threat than the dead, as my grandma always says. I then remembered the tap running on and off in my parents' bedroom. I went to check, and there were a few droplets in the sink, as if the tap had been used recently, but not for a few minutes, meaning none of the police officers would have used it. I fell asleep fine that night, more just annoyed at whatever it was that made me so scared I had to call the police. As a kid, I was moved around a lot. The 6th house was outside of a small town called Beaver Lodge. It was located far back from the road, and the driveway was a kilometre long. The tree line behind our house was off limits, as it was full of muskeg that in the past had swallowed up cattle and a tractor. We had 10 acres but only had access to 2. The house was previously owned by drug dealers, so from day one it had an eerie vibe. The first incident happened during the winter. I began having horrible nightmares and waking up in a cold sweat. This happened the rest of the time we lived there. The next thing was early in the morning. As I waited for the bus, I heard a very strange squeal and then a loud crash. I bolted back to the house and ended up missing the bus. The third time, myself and my older sister were babysitting our 3 younger siblings. We had put them to bed around 7:30 and then started watching movies. Around 9 p.m, I went upstairs to check on the 2 younger siblings. They were fast asleep. I settled on the couch in the basement with my sister and continued to watch a movie. Then all of a sudden, we heard frantic thumping as if someone was running up the hallway above us. Then one of the doors slammed shut. My sister and I looked at each other and proceeded to head up the stairs. We peered down the hallway, terrified. Our parents' bedroom door swung open and then slammed closed again. We bolted down the stairs and stayed paralysed on the couch until our parents came home. I have more stories from this house. Let me know if you want more. The place is in China, while I was there for a tour, during a visit to a place which is famous for its tea, Longjing tea. The tour guide brought us to a famous well, which strangely until today, I've not been able to Google and heard of. The well, unlike a usual well, it's only barely surrounded by any wall or stone barricade to stop people from falling in. The guide showed us the well and its strange phenomena. A ripple created on the water would not cease to stop. I'll just keep going. Shortly after playing around with the well, we moved on to an area not far away from the well. But that's where the strangest thing happened. I saw another tour group around the well, and one of the guides is standing in the well as though it's a short puddle, which is ankle deep, jumping up and down while beckoning me over to join him. Just as I was stepping into the well, someone grabbed hold of my arm and said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'd like to join them," and turned over towards the well with no one in sight. I didn't let my parents know about this, but did tell my mother many years later. Recently, I saw a ghost documentary about a farm in the US which is haunted. In the story, there's a well hidden below its floor with the same property, a ripple which never stops. This happened when I was in college and I couldn't figure out any explanation. This happened in Portland, Maine, and if any city is haunted, it's there. The whole city was burned down more than once and it just has an eerie feel. My roommate and I were leaving our apartment for a couple hours to go work on a school project at night. We said bye to my cat who was walking around the kitchen and locked the door. We always locked our door because we live in a sketchy area. A couple hours later, we came back. The door's open. Immediately, we're freaked out because we both remember locking it. We slowly step inside and don't see my cat, who always runs to greet us. We hear him meowing, and we find him shut in my roommate's bedroom. He was definitely out when we left. The next thing we noticed, the most terrifying part, is our magnetic whiteboard, which was on our fridge, was in the middle of the kitchen on the floor now. Earlier I had written a list of all my homework on it, so it said drawing, painting, sculpture, etc., and it had some little doodles on it too. But now everything on it was erased except the word pain from painting. I took a pic of it, but I can't find it. Now we're panicking. We first think someone broke in, so we call our guy friends who live down the road, and they rush over with knives to search through our apartment. Nobody's there. Nothing is stolen. Stull, Kansas, is notorious for an old church and cemetery said to be haunted. I live 10 minutes max from Stull and drive through it all the time. All of us do. Some people believe the hype, some have used internet information to debunk it. Doesn't matter to me. I don't know what to believe, but I know what happened this particular night. Friend and I driving, 2 or 3 a.m. Stull is set away, out on some winding roads in the country, and I'm terrible with directions because I never had a car till I was 20. I'm 25 now and getting better. Cruises like this for me are destinationless because I'm always lost. Car has old locking brakes, I'm pretty sure. So we were driving and a dog or deer ran out in front of my car. I slam on the brakes on the gravel and we skid sideways on the road to a halt. As we do so, the figure floats down the ditch of the road, up the other side and over the fence, disappearing. On the other side of the fence, a large hill and what I assume is the old Stull Cemetery. One not easily found from the main roads. Due to the winding roads and the properties being blocked off with gates here and there, somehow I had managed to skid to a complete stop in the dead of the night, in the middle of nowhere, because a ghost had run across the road. And there she disappeared into the cemetery. And we got the whole entire fuck out of there. Believe what you want. I'm 27 and have very, very few freaky experiences like this to recite. But this is the real deal here, folks. I have nothing to gain. I don't know any of y'all. I'm just a corn-fed Kansas boy who shit his pants on a dirt road. When I was a child, I used to see ghosts in our old apartment in Manila. Mostly were just blurry figures of a person that is just passing by. But one night, while I was late at night watching TV, I saw a man standing on our stairs. The man's wearing all black, and I can clearly see his face. I could even see that he's a skinhead. He doesn't look menacing, he's just looking. But I was so scared that I peed my pants. I told my mom about it, but she wouldn't believe me. My dad at that time was a delivery driver, so I barely saw him. We moved to another town after a few years. Decades later, while we're reminiscing about our life in Manila, I told my family how I used to see ghosts in our old apartment. My dad was shook and told us he used to see ghosts too. He asked me why I didn't say anything. I said I told Mom, but she wouldn't believe me. My dad said he used to see a black figure of a man on our stairs whenever he came home from work. My younger brother told us that he used to see the same black figure around our house. Then I told them I could see him clearly and describe how he looked. My dad told us the reason why he had to do a blood sacrifice of a chicken ritual is because of the ghosts he sees. He thought he was just too tired from work. And then he told us the history of that apartment and who he thinks that ghost is. Few years before we moved to that apartment, there was a tenant who committed suicide by hanging himself on the stairs. He was a nursing student studying for his licensure exam, and he rented that apartment alone so he could focus. But due to the pressure from his father, who's a military man and beat him, he decided to end his life. Ironically, I'm now working as a nurse and my brother is in the military. We didn't know his story until this year. About 15 years ago, I was at my best friend's house at night, which had a huge garden and a gate that was the main entrance. We were talking normally, smoking a cigarette, sitting next to the main entrance. This is difficult to explain, and English isn't my first language, so I'll do my best. The gate had a translucent and orange glass window, so you couldn't see who it was if someone knocked on the door. Only their silhouette and the shadow of their feet below the door. At a certain point, we see that someone stopped at the front door on the street side outside the house. But the funny thing, we didn't see their silhouette. We only saw the shadow of their feet. We froze because it was extremely rare, unless it was a child. But what was a child doing in the street at 10 p.m. at night? So my friend went to the gate and crouched down to look under the space under the door. Do you know what happened? The shadow of that person's feet ran out, and we never saw the shadow or the silhouette. At that moment, we were more surprised than scared. So we dropped the topic and moved to the other side of the garden to continue talking. And here begins what I usually do not want to remember. At one point, my friend was silent, looking at her cell phone, and I just kept smoking my cigarette, looking at the wall where my friend was leaning. And that's when I saw it, clearer than day. The shadow of a child, very clear, well-defined, passing as if it had walked in front of us. Guys, it was a kid. The shadow was so clear that I couldn't have imagined something like that. As it happened, it disappeared, where the wall ended. I instantly told my friend, "Girl, I just saw something horrible." And she refused to talk about it with me. She said, "Don't say anything, let's go inside." Since that day, I'm convinced that there is something beyond our understanding, and that, above all, they're not always seen. Sometime later, my friend told me that she found toys lying around her house that hadn't even belonged to her. So, yeah, I met the ghost of a child. So there are some things going on in our house. We've owned the house for 4 years. I've always felt uneasy about our bedroom closet. I've kept that door shut because it gives me the creeps when I have to get up and pass it to go to the bathroom. First on experience, heard 3 heavy steps come from the closet towards my bed. I wasn't asleep. Scared me half to death. Second on experience, we have a very old grandfather clock that hasn't worked for years. It's not wound. It hasn't been working. Weights are at the bottom. My husband and I were eating lunch in the kitchen, and the grandfather clock all of a sudden struck 12. Third odd experience, we heard my stepson's very unusual cackle laugh from upstairs. He was out of town and not here. His laugh is very distinct. My husband and I both heard it. Fourth odd experience, we had a friend over. A heavy glass flew across the bar without any of us close to us. It hit our fridge with such force, it dented our refrigerator in 3 different places. Wigged us out, but our friend more so. He doesn't want to visit anymore. Fifth odd experience. I was the only one home besides my dogs. We were all downstairs, and I had distinctive footsteps walking upstairs. Sixth odd experience. At 8:25 tonight, my husband and I were sitting around watching Parks and Recs with sleeping puppy dogs. We're downstairs. We heard an incredibly loud noise. It literally sounded like someone jumped off the bed upstairs or fell hard on the floor. My husband investigated every room and every closet and checked to see if anything fell. There's nothing we have upstairs that could fall and sound that hard that we have on any walls. The pictures are still on the walls. I'm starting to get scared. Any clues on what on earth could be doing this? Ghost? Demon? I was on my way to work, just as normal as any other day. Same time, same route, same music, same coffee. Almost made it there too. In all honesty, I don't remember what made me drive off the road and into a ditch, totaling my car. I don't remember the crash. I swear to this day I made it to the next stop sign and got behind a black Dodge Challenger and made the next right turn behind it. It must have been an out-of-body experience because my car and I were in a ditch 20 to 30 feet before that stop sign. Fast forward, I woke up in the hospital, disoriented and confused. I'd never been in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling before, so I guess I was asked the routine questions. Do you know where you are? My smartass always having something to say. It's not heaven. I probably wouldn't be going there. A hospital? Do you know why you're here? And for the love of all that's good, I couldn't remember one single bit of it. I legitimately thought I made it to that stop sign. Didn't even know I had a car accident. No, what happened? Is there anyone you'd like us to contact? I didn't remember that I was married, much less remember the name of my spouse. But it was at this moment when I looked up and saw at the foot of my bed 3 large shadows. There was one officer at the window to my left, 2 nurses on my right between the bed and the wall, and the doctor was at my hip to my left. I asked, why so many people? The doctor said the nurses had to be there and the cop had to do a report. I pointed at the shadows at the foot of my bed, but they were gone now. The doc confirmed there's nobody there. Still dazed and confused, the officer, now standing at my hip and the doctor at the foot of the bed, told me I was in a car accident. So I asked if there was anyone else injured. People in the other vehicle, walking pedestrians. God forgive me if I hit an innocent animal. Lord knows we have deer, fox and bunnies in the area. No, just you. It was just you. I'm a person with a good heart, so maybe it was the relief that I didn't hurt anyone else. I started to cry. The officer kindly wished me a speedy recovery and made his way out. I wiped my tears, opened my eyes, and like the worst jump scare in a 3D movie, there was an old man in my face repeatedly saying, "Help me." I froze up. I felt my heart skip a beat. Hair stood up on my arms, legs, and neck. I sensed my blood pressure drop and the heart monitor made its noise. Trying to evaluate the situation as best I could, as quick as I could, I looked around. The nurses who were to my right were gone. I must have missed the moment they left. To my left was the old man in full-body apparition. It wasn't just him. There were 4 phantoms asking me for help. 3 male and 1 female. They all had clothing like the kind you would see in the Civil War history book era. The nurses rushed in because of the beeping machine attached to me, and I passed out. When I woke up, There was a surgeon telling me the extent of my injuries, which I don't feel are relevant for this writing, so I'll leave them out. I asked him to send up the hospital priest. He tried to press for information as to why I wanted the priest, but I simply told him I wanted someone to pray for me. Again, I passed out. The time lapses between passing out and waking up were never clear to me. When I woke up again, the priest was there with me. He stood to my right in plain clothes, asked why I wanted him there. I asked him to close the door. After he did, I told him everything I saw. The shadow people, the old man, and the three with him asking for help. I asked the priest to pray for any lost souls, to bless the room I laid in, and to bless me with holy water. He told me he understood my concern and would pray for me, and come back to check on me. I spent another 3 weeks laying in that hospital bed, passing out and waking up. After making a full recovery, I've gone back to the hospital to visit the cathedral and thank the priest. I don't know if the prayers by the priest helped. I can only hope they did. After spending a few years living abroad with my father, I returned to my native country. I was ready to start my adult life. From zero. From my mother's guest room. I was then in my early 20s. She had recently moved into a new apartment. The building was newly built on the edge of the city. It was nice. High ceilings, large rooms, quiet neighborhood, though on the edge of the bad side of town. Rumor is that the area used to be known for prostitution, drugs, and the occasional dead body. Until this new building came around. Given my experiences and boredom, mostly boredom, I decided to try to see if I could connect with anyone. Stupid me. I drew up a flimsy Ouija board on paper and used my own gold ring as a pointer. Didn't look worthy of making contact with the bottom of a garbage can. It's a Ouija. It doesn't have to look special. If it's meant to make contact and something's there, there's a chance you just might. And you may not like the results. I spent 2 minutes drawing the letters, the words yes, no, goodbye, and probably 10 minutes talking to what I thought was nothing. I'm very impatient. I asked typical weird questions. Hello? Is there anybody here with me? Are there any spirits who would like to communicate with me? And so on. Never getting any response, I said goodbye, tore up the paper, and that was the end of that. Or so I thought. Days went by, and little things started happening. I felt as if I wasn't alone. I started seeing shadows in the corner of my peripheral vision. But being who I am and having had the experiences I've had, I didn't think much of it. It didn't scare or faze me one bit. Days became weeks, weeks became months of this. And with the time, my paranoia settled in. As this time I was struggling to find work, and being a burden to my mother took a toll on both of us. Stress levels in the home were consistently growing. There were occasions when I would hear kids running just outside my bedroom door. So I'd get up, open the door, and there'd be nothing there. I'd be as quiet as possible to see if I could hear kids at all. Nothing. I'd run outside, no kids, no movement, silence. At this point, I knew what was going on. I knew I opened a gateway for someone or something to communicate with me. This is why I don't believe that saying goodbye after ending a session will close or end communications. It's bullshit. If something wants to communicate, it will. Many times I'd be asleep in bed and wake up because I felt someone pull my leg. Nobody there, but I'd have a big bruise on my leg. These just kept getting more and more intense. On one occasion, I got caught off guard. I was just getting out of the shower. The bathroom doorknob jostled as if someone was trying to rush into the bathroom. I froze, looking at the doorknob. I knew I was alone, and so there's now hair standing up on the back of my neck and goosebumps down my spine. And immediately after, I heard a little girl laugh as she ran away from the door. For a split second, my heart stopped. I snapped myself out of the stunned scare and flung the door open. I tried my best not to emit any sense of fear and tried to shrug it off. I put on music with a happy tone, got dressed, and played my favourite video game to take my mind off what had just happened. Soon after this occurrence, I found work, which was a bit of a relief. It meant I didn't have to be in that apartment as much. I worked long hours, I came home, slept, woke up, and went back to work. The leg pulls, bruises, shadows, it all continued. Not daily, but it did. I said enough in the morning I woke up to see little red claw marks on the wall and ceiling. That was the signal to get out. It looked like something with 3 fingernails took an uppercut swipe at the wall and also skimmed the ceiling in one swing. I went to get a chair to get a closer look. Think of an oversized cat's nails leaving crayon marks. This was before Facebook existed, so taking a picture wasn't something easily accessible. From that moment, I began to work the idea into my mother's head that she deserved an upgrade in life. So I got my boss to help find a place closer to work, and that was that. A month later, we were out of there. Lucky me. Whatever it was, it didn't follow. As far as I know, my mother never experienced anything. She never seemed out of the ordinary, and I never told her. This is from many, many years ago. She's since died of natural causes. She lived for many years after we moved out. May she rest in peace. I don't know exactly how old I was. Too young to know much about death, if anything at all. I'll try not to make this drag out too long while providing proper detail. A boy in my class had passed. How? I don't know. And my mom took me to the ceremonies. It was one of those where they had the funeral services and then the burial immediately after, because it's all on the same property. For some reason we were late, so I didn't see the boy in the casket. We made it just in time to accompany everyone else outside to the burial grounds on foot. The slow walk had me bored, so I started playing tag with one of the other kids. I didn't recognize him at the moment as my classmate. He had on a sailor suit and seemed happy to see me. I remember that after a while, my mother called my name, came running after me and grabbed me by my arm, scolding me. I told her I was just playing with the boy, but now he was gone. What boy? Stop lying. Behave yourself. Blah, blah, blah. A young man, probably early 20s, intervened in my mother's lecture. I don't remember the words verbatim, but it was him asking, "What boy? You're the only kid here." This got more people's attention, including that of an older lady, and her attention drew a crowd. She turned out to be the boy's grandmother. The young man and the grandmother insisted on knowing what little boy. They told me calmly to look around and repeatedly told me I was the only child there. The grandmother asked me to describe the boy. When I mentioned his sailor suit, it rang a bell. The 20-year-old said that the little boy they were burying had a sailor suit. Then the grandmother agreed. Everyone began talking among each other in a worrisome excitement, trying to figure out what was going on. I was confused about what was going on. The grandmother asked me if I would recognize the boy I was playing tag with, and had someone else bring a picture. I couldn't recognize him though, and scared that I had done something wrong. I didn't answer. The grandmother ordered for the coffin to be opened. A yelling lady protested, I'm guessing his mother. But in the end, they, guessing again, groundskeepers, raised the coffin above ground level and got it opened. They asked me if the boy laying there was the boy I was playing with. This is probably why I remember this so vividly. Fucking traumatized. Anyway, then I saw the boy appear again, holding his grandmother's hand at the other end of the coffin. Then just as quickly as he appeared, he was gone again when I looked up at the grandmother to tell her he was right there, holding her hand. My mother escorted me away from the coffin. In the meantime, the coffin was closed again and began to be lowered. The grandmother reached in and gave me a hug and a flower. Told me to throw it into the grave. It took me a minute to react, but I did. Then, my mum had me say goodbye to everyone and we left early. Years later, my mother still denies this ever happened.